I still remember the exact moment everything inside me stopped. I was standing in the middle of my own baby shower, smiling, holding my stomach, when I heard my husband's voice behind me say into his phone, "She still thinks it's mine, don't tell her anything yet." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe, because that she was me, and it was my baby. My name is Emily Carter, and up until that moment, I believed I had a perfect life. A loving husband, a peaceful home, and a baby on the way that we had both been waiting for. I was 7 months pregnant, and my baby shower was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The house was filled with soft decorations, laughter, and people celebrating with me. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off, something I couldn't explain. Daniel, my husband, wasn't beside me like I expected. He wasn't greeting guests or holding my hand or smiling at me the way he always did. Instead, he was standing far from the crowd, his phone pressed to his ear, his body tense, his attention completely somewhere else. And the worst part was, he didn't even look at me when I arrived. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself he was just busy, maybe work stress or something urgent. But every time I looked at him, he seemed further away from me. Not just physically, but like he was slipping out of my life in real time. People surrounded me, congratulating me, hugging me, asking about the baby. I smiled, I nodded, I played along. But my eyes kept drifting back to Daniel. And every single time, he was avoiding me. Even my mother noticed. She leaned closer and asked quietly if everything was okay between us. I forced a smile and said he was just stressed. But deep down, I knew I was lying. This wasn't stress. This was distance. Something deeper. Something wrong. As the party continued, music played, people laughed, and games started, but Daniel never came near me. Not once. And that silence between us started feeling louder than everything else in the room. Finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked toward him slowly, my heart beating harder with every step. When I reached him, I said his name softly. Daniel. He turned, and for a brief moment, I didn't recognize his face. It wasn't warm. It wasn't familiar. It was guarded, like he was hiding something even from me. "I've been looking for you," I said. "Yeah, I've just been busy," he replied quickly. "Busy?" "At our baby shower." I reached for his hand, something natural, something we had done thousands of times before. But the moment my fingers touched his, he pulled away instantly. Not gently. Not accidentally. Instantly. Like he didn't want me to touch him. I froze. Before I could say anything, his phone rang. And everything about him changed the second he saw the screen. His face tightened, his body went stiff, and without even explaining, he stepped away. "I need to take this," he said. And he walked off. Something inside me told me to follow him. So I did. Not too close. Just enough to hear. He stepped into the hallway, lowered his voice, but not enough. And then I heard it again. "She still thinks it's mine, don't tell her anything yet." The world around me disappeared in that second. The music, the laughter, the celebration, everything. I slowly placed my hand on my stomach, my baby moving slightly inside me, but instead of comfort, I felt fear. Because I couldn't stop thinking, what did he mean, not mine? After hearing those words, I couldn't tell how long I stood there. It felt like time had stopped around me, like the world inside that house was still moving, but I was stuck in one moment, replaying the same sentence over and over again in my head. "She still thinks it's mine, don't tell her anything yet." My baby moved slightly inside me, but instead of comfort, I felt something colder spread through my chest. Something wasn't right, and deep down I knew it wasn't just my imagination anymore. I stayed in the hallway for a few seconds longer, watching Daniel through the corner as he finished the call. His voice was low, controlled, careful. The kind of voice people use when they are hiding something they don't want to be heard. When he finally ended the call, he stood there for a moment, taking a breath like he was preparing himself before walking back into the room. And when he turned around, I quickly stepped back, pretending I hadn't followed him at all. When he returned to the baby shower, everything about him had changed again. The tension was gone from his face, replaced by a calm expression that almost looked rehearsed. He smiled at a few guests, nodded at someone speaking to him, and acted like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just said something that shattered my entire world. And that confused me even more than the words I had heard. Because how could someone go from that level of tension to normal in just a few seconds? I tried to join back into the party, but I couldn't focus on anything. Every laugh around me felt distant. Every conversation sounded muffled. My mind kept going back to that sentence. I kept trying to find a logical explanation, something that would make it less painful, less confusing. But no matter how many times I tried, nothing made sense. At one point, Olivia came over and asked if I was okay. I forced a smile and told her I was just tired. But I could tell she didn't fully believe me. Still, she didn't push further, and I was grateful for that. Because I didn't even know how to explain what I was feeling. How do you tell someone that your husband just said something that made you question your entire pregnancy? As the party continued, I kept watching Daniel from a distance. And what I noticed made my chest tighten even more. He wasn't just avoiding me emotionally, he was physically keeping distance. He would step away when I came near. He would turn his body slightly whenever I tried to get closer. It wasn't obvious to others, but I noticed. I noticed everything now. At one point, I saw him take his phone out again. My heart immediately reacted before my mind did. I watched him carefully, pretending to talk to someone nearby, but my eyes stayed on him. He didn't notice me. He was too focused on the screen. And then I saw it, another call. He turned away again, walking toward the hallway for privacy. This time I didn't wait. I followed him immediately, my steps slower but more careful. I didn't want him to notice me, but I needed to hear more. I needed something that made sense. When I reached the edge of the hallway, I stopped just out of sight and listened. His voice was different again. Tense. Frustrated this time. I told you not to call me during this, he said quietly. There was a pause. Then I heard him say, No, she still doesn't know anything. My grip tightened on the wall beside me. Still doesn't know anything. What was I supposed to not know? I took a small step forward, just enough to see him slightly from the corner. He was facing away, his posture rigid. Whoever he was talking to clearly had control over the conversation. Because Daniel, my husband, sounded like he was being careful with every word he said. Like one wrong sentence could create a problem. Then I heard something else. Not clearly, but enough to make my stomach drop again. Just give me time. I'll handle it. Handle what? What exactly was there to handle? My mind was filling with questions faster than I could process them. And every answer I imagined made things worse, not better. Suddenly, Daniel turned slightly, and I quickly stepped back before he could see me. My heart was racing now, not just from fear, but from confusion. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew one thing clearly now. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't stress or work pressure. This was something hidden, something deliberate. I went back into the main room and sat down slowly, trying to act normal, trying to breathe normally. But my body didn't feel like mine anymore. Everything felt distant, disconnected. My baby moved again, and I placed my hand over my stomach, whispering softly to myself that everything would be okay. But for the first time, I wasn't sure if I believed it. Daniel came back into the room a few minutes later, smiling again, acting like everything was fine. He even came close to greet a guest standing near me, but didn't look directly at me. Not even once. That avoidance hurt more than anything else. Because it confirmed something I didn't want to accept yet. He was choosing distance. He was choosing silence. And I didn't know why. The rest of the baby shower passed like a blur. People laughed, photos were taken, gifts were opened, but I felt like I was sitting inside a life that wasn't mine anymore. I kept waiting for the moment when everyone would leave, because I couldn't hold this confusion inside me any longer. I needed answers, even if I wasn't ready for them. That night, when the last guest finally left and the house fell silent again, I stood up slowly and walked toward Daniel. He was sitting on the sofa, looking down at his phone, calm again, like nothing had happened earlier. I stopped in front of him and said his name softly. Daniel, we need to talk. He looked up at me, and for a second I saw it again. That same hesitation, that same fear he had tried to hide all evening. And this time I knew he understood one thing clearly. I wasn't going to let this go anymore. The silence between us felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced in my life. Daniel looked at me for a few seconds after I said we needed to talk, but he didn't respond immediately. It was like he was choosing his words carefully, like every sentence mattered more than I was ready to understand. Finally, he sighed and stood up slowly, glancing toward the hallway. "Not here," he said quietly. That simple line made my chest tighten again. Not here. Not at home. Not at our baby shower. Not in front of anyone. It felt like every place I existed was suddenly the wrong place to ask questions. I followed him without saying anything because at this point, I wasn't afraid of hearing the truth anymore. I was afraid of not knowing it. We walked into the kitchen where the house finally felt empty enough for real silence. Daniel didn't sit down. He leaned against the counter instead, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to steady himself. I stood across from him, waiting for something to make sense, waiting for him to stop treating me like a stranger. "Emily," he said finally, his voice softer now. "You need to understand something." "I already understand enough," I replied quickly. "I heard what you said on the phone." His expression tightened instantly. That reaction told me everything I needed without him even speaking. He remembered. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "I didn't mean for you to hear that," he said after a pause. "That's not an answer," I said, my voice shaking slightly now. "What does it mean? She still thinks it's mine? What does that mean, Daniel?" He looked away for a moment, like he couldn't hold my eyes. That alone hurt more than anything else. When someone avoids your gaze, it feels like they are avoiding your reality too. "It's complicated," he said quietly. I let out a small, bitter laugh. "Everything is complicated with you tonight. First you avoid me, then you pull away from me, then I hear you talking like my baby isn't even yours. And now you're telling me it's complicated?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly stressed, but I didn't care anymore. I had been patient all evening. I had smiled through confusion, through embarrassment, through pain. Now I just wanted answers. "Tell me the truth," I said firmly. "Right now." For a moment, he didn't speak. The silence stretched between us again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt loaded, like something was about to break. Finally, he spoke again, but his voice was lower, more serious. "There are things happening that I can't explain easily," he said. "Things involving people I can't just ignore." That didn't answer anything. It only made things worse. "People?" I repeated. "What people? Daniel, what are you even talking about?" He hesitated again, and I noticed his hands were slightly shaking now. Not enough for anyone else to see, but enough for me to notice. That's when I realized something was genuinely wrong. Not just emotionally wrong. Something deeper. Something dangerous. "I'm trying to protect you," he said finally. That sentence hit me harder than anything else, because I had heard that excuse before. And every time someone says they are protecting you, it usually means they are hiding something from you instead. Protect me from what? I asked immediately. From my own life? From my own baby? His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. That's because you refuse to tell me anything." I raised my voice now, unable to hold it back. "You expect me to just sit here and accept that you're acting like a stranger in my own home?" He looked down for a moment, then spoke again more quietly. "If I tell you everything, it will make things worse." I stepped closer to him. "Worse than this?" I asked. "Worse than you ignoring me at my own baby shower? Worse than you pulling away from me like I don't exist?" He didn't answer. That silence was becoming his habit, and I was starting to realize something terrifying about it. Silence isn't confusion. Sometimes silence is control. At that moment, his phone vibrated again. Just a small sound, but it changed the energy in the room instantly. His body stiffened slightly. I noticed it immediately. "Don't," I said quickly before he could pick it up. He froze for a second, then looked at me. For a brief moment, I thought he might actually listen. But then the phone vibrated again, and his attention shifted back to it, like something else was pulling him away from me. "I have to take this," he said again. "No," I said sharply this time. "Not this time." But he still picked it up. And as soon as he answered, I saw it again. That shift in him, that change in posture, the way his voice dropped, the way he turned slightly away from me, like I wasn't even in the room anymore. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught pieces. Fragments that didn't fit together yet, but felt important. I told you not now. No, she still doesn't know. Just wait. Wait for what? Wait for what exactly? My heart started beating faster again. I stepped back slowly, watching him. And that's when something inside me snapped into focus. This wasn't random. This wasn't one secret. This was coordination. Someone else was involved. Someone he was answering to. When he finally ended the call, he didn't look at me right away. He just stood there for a moment, like he was resetting himself again. Then he finally spoke, his voice softer. I need time. That's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about hiding a truth. This was about managing it step by step, like I was being kept away from it on purpose. And whatever was coming next, I was no longer just a part of it. I was being kept in the dark for a reason. After that night, nothing felt normal anymore. Even when Daniel was physically present in the house, it felt like part of him was somewhere else. We stopped talking the way we used to. There were no casual conversations, no shared moments, no comfort between us. Only silence and distance that kept growing every day. And the worst part was, he acted like everything was still fine. I started noticing small things first. The way he kept his phone face down all the time. The way he stepped out of rooms to take calls. The way he would suddenly go quiet when I entered a space. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. I wanted to believe that what I heard at the baby shower was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew I was just delaying the truth I wasn't ready to accept. One evening, I decided I couldn't stay in this confusion anymore. Daniel had gone out for a quick meeting, or at least that's what he told me. Something in me didn't trust it anymore. So, I did something I had never done before. I checked his phone. My hands were shaking as I held it. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid, that I would find nothing, and then I could finally calm down. But what I found instead made my stomach drop. There were messages. Not many at first glance, but enough to make me freeze. Names I didn't recognize. Short, coded conversations. Words that didn't make sense on their own, but felt connected in a way I couldn't understand yet. And then I saw one message that stood out clearly. Don't let her find out before the transfer is complete. My heart stopped for a second. Transfer? What transfer? I read it again and again, hoping I was misunderstanding it. But I wasn't. Someone was clearly talking about me, about something I was not supposed to know. And then another message appeared below it. She is getting suspicious. Handle it carefully. My fingers went cold. It wasn't just Daniel anymore. Someone else was involved. Someone who knew exactly what was happening. I quickly put the phone back where I found it and stepped away, trying to control my breathing. My baby moved inside me again, but this time, I didn't feel comfort. I felt fear mixed with confusion. Because now, this wasn't just about Daniel acting strange. This was planned, coordinated, hidden. That night, when Daniel came back home, I watched him carefully. He acted normal again, smiling slightly when he saw me, asking if I was okay. But I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Every word he said felt rehearsed. Every smile felt like a mask. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I needed to be sure. I needed proof. Not just words I overheard or messages I saw in panic. I needed something solid. Something he couldn't deny. So I started watching him more closely. The next day, I noticed he received a call again while I was in the kitchen. He saw my presence, hesitated, and then walked outside. This time, I followed him carefully, stopping just near the window where I could hear his voice faintly. I told you I need more time, he said quietly. A pause. Then, no, she hasn't found out anything yet. Another pause. Just keep everything under control. My heart pounded harder. He was lying. Again and again. And whoever he was talking to, they weren't just random people. They were part of something bigger. When he came back inside, I pretended nothing had happened. But inside, I had already made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, confused, scared, and slowly losing trust in my own life. That night, after he fell asleep, I stayed awake. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I had heard, everything I had seen. And slowly, a thought formed in my mind that scared me more than anything else. What if the baby shower call wasn't the beginning? What if it was just the moment I accidentally got close to a truth that had already been happening long before I noticed? The next morning, I decided I would find out the truth myself, no matter what it cost. But I didn't know that the truth was already closer to me than I thought. And it was about to change everything I believed about my husband and my life. That morning felt different the moment I opened my eyes. It wasn't just anxiety anymore. It was something heavier, something final, like I was standing at the edge of a truth I could no longer avoid. Daniel had already left the house, but his absence didn't bring relief like it used to. Instead, it made everything louder. The silence, the questions, the fear. I kept thinking about everything I had seen, the messages, the phone calls, the way he changed whenever someone contacted him. And now I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't random behavior. This was a pattern. Someone was controlling the information around me, and Daniel was part of it. I made a decision that morning. I was going to follow him. Not out of anger, not out of emotion, but because I needed the truth before I lost my mind trying to imagine it. I told him I had a doctor's appointment later in the day, and he didn't question it. That alone made something inside me tighten again, because the Daniel I used to know would have asked questions, would have insisted on coming with me. But now he just nodded and left. As soon as he was gone, I got ready and followed him carefully. My hands were shaking the entire time I drove, but I kept going. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew I couldn't go back to pretending anymore. He didn't go to any office. He went to a building I had never seen before. It looked like a private facility. Quiet. Isolated. No clear signs outside. I parked a little distance away and watched him enter. My heart started beating faster. I waited a few minutes, then followed him inside. The moment I stepped in, I felt it, something was off. The place didn't feel like a normal office. It felt controlled. Too quiet. Too organized. Like everything was being watched. I moved carefully through the hallway until I saw him. Daniel was standing in a room with another man. I stayed hidden just enough to listen. "You told me she still hasn't suspected anything," the man said. Daniel nodded. "She's close. I need a little more time." "Time is something you don't have anymore," the man replied firmly. My chest tightened. I stepped a little closer, just enough to hear better. Then the man said something that made my entire body freeze. "The financial transfer is already in motion. Once it's complete, there's no reversing it." Transfer. That word again. My baby moved inside me, but I didn't even feel it this time. My focus was completely locked on what I was hearing. Daniel lowered his head slightly. "Just don't involve her more than necessary." The man looked at him coldly. "She's already involved. She's the reason this works." My breathing stopped. Me? Before I could process it further, I accidentally stepped back, and the floor made a small sound. Both of them turned instantly. My heart dropped. Daniel saw me. For a second, everything went silent. No words. No movement. Just pure shock on his face. "Emily," he said, his voice breaking slightly. I stepped forward slowly, tears already forming in my eyes. "Tell me what is going on." The man in the room stepped back, observing silently now, like he was waiting for something to happen. Daniel looked at me, then looked away, like he couldn't face me directly anymore. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said quietly. My voice shook. "So it's true? Everything I heard? The calls? The messages? The baby shower?" He closed his eyes for a moment, like he had been carrying something unbearable for a long time. Then he finally said it. "It's not about another woman, it's about your father." That sentence hit me harder than anything else. My father. I shook my head. "No, don't bring him into this." But Daniel stepped closer, his voice lower now, more emotional. "Your father is the one who started all of this. The contracts, the transfer, everything, it's connected to him." The world around me felt like it tilted. No, I whispered. You're lying. But deep down, I already knew this wasn't a simple lie. It was something deeper. Something planned long before I ever noticed. Daniel continued, his voice shaking slightly now. I didn't disappear from you because I stopped loving you. I disappeared because I was told if I stayed, you would be used as leverage. My hands started trembling harder. And the baby? I asked quietly. He looked at me with pain in his eyes. They were never questioning if it was mine, he said. They were trying to control what the baby represents. Silence fell between us again. Everything I believed about my life, my marriage, my family started collapsing in my mind. I stepped back slowly, unable to breathe properly. So what now? I asked. Daniel looked at me, helpless for the first time. Now they decide what happens next. But as I stood there, frozen between truth and fear, I realized something even worse. The real story hadn't ended. It had just begun.